Good morning. I'm John, and I'm one of the volunteers here at Rush Ranch. We're going to talk about hunting. Okay, a couple of words that you need to probably be introduced to. One of them is the term hunter-gatherers, and that describes the lifestyle of most people before machines. They were hunters that hunted animals for food, and the gatherers were usually the women and the older girls, and they were gathering seeds, plants, things like that, again for food. But we're going to talk about hunting. Now, when we talk about hunting and Indians, the first thing most people think of is this, a bow, right? Okay. And it goes with this, the arrow. Okay. The early bows are thousands and thousands of years old. They came from back in Asia somewhere. So when the Indians, the people we call Indians today, came to North America, they brought the technology with them. This started life as just a piece of wood, okay, from a tree, green, and you know, green wood is supple, it'll bend, and so you've got to get it to this shape. Now the technique is to heat the wood. You're not trying to burn it, but you're trying to dry it out. You're driving the moisture out of the wood, and then if you put pressure on it, you can kind of very slowly start it to bend, and as it dries, it'll hold that shape. And that's the technique for building the bow. Okay, the string here, typically North American or the American Indians use the front tendons of a deer. It's the right length and it's strong and it lasts a long time. That's the bow. Okay. The arrow, the technique is the same thing. The hunter would find a stick that's fairly straight. He'd shave off any bumps he didn't want, and then he'd do the same thing. He'd heat it to dry it out, and then at the same time holding it to get it as straight as he could. Okay. The point is a material called obsidian. It comes from volcanoes. It's found anywhere you find volcanoes, you'll find obsidian. It's the same thing as glass. Its basis is silica. Okay, one of the most common elements around. Okay. This is a obsidian rock. Okay, it comes out of volcanoes. It looks like a rock, except wherever you see chips in it, you'll see the glass through. See, the inside is glass, the same stuff. And the hunters would take a piece of this, some kind of rock or whatever, and they'd start breaking it up, trying to break it up. They're trying to crack off flakes, like these are called flakes. And they're looking for flakes that are flat, okay, because then you can work them. And then with some kind of a tool, you start chipping at the edges, because remember, this is glass, so you can chip it. And the hunter would just keep working at it until he gets the shape that he wants. You want a spear point, you work it down to here. You want it a little smaller, arrow point, you work it down to wherever you want it. This, believe it or not, is an arrow point, but it's not obsidian. This started life as a glass bottle. Okay, this is my favorite. This is a tool. It's a hunting tool called a throwing stick. Okay, and it's probably one of the first hunting tools that boys and girls your age would learn to use. Okay? It's just a piece of wood carved in this, you know, some kind of shape like this, but fairly flat so that you can throw it. It's a throwing stick. Okay? And your dad would give it to you, and he'd put a stick maybe 25 feet away, and he'd say, "Okay, kid, go practice." And you would practice throwing at that stick. And when you could hit the stick fairly regularly or get very close, then Dad would make a little wooden hoop, and somebody would roll the hoop, and now you try to hit a moving target. Okay? And when you can do that, then you can go hunting. Now, the animal that the boys, or girls in some cases, usually hunted was rabbits. Why rabbits? Two reasons. Number one, they're just bigger targets than squirrels, things like that. And more than any other animal, rabbits are curious. Okay? If you don't threaten them, they usually don't run. I mean, they'll run a little ways away to get away from you, but then they'll stop and sit up and look at you. They want to know what you're doing. So that's what the kids will do. Maybe 10 of them, 10 boys, all of you have a half a dozen rabbit sticks in a pouch. And you find this group of rabbits in the field, and you spread out, and you surround them very casually. You don't even look at them. Okay? The rabbits, they see you, but you're not threatening them, so they keep eating. One of them watches you, and when you have them surrounded, then you close in on them, and there's no place to run. And then when you're in range, you just cut loose with your rabbit sticks, and you're going to get rabbits, guaranteed. You bring them home to Mom skins them, She'll probably do something with the skins here, but the meat is supper tonight, okay? And this is how boys learn one of the important things to feed their families, important when they become adults. This is another tool. This is a fishing tool, believe it or not. Okay? It's nothing but a piece of bone sharpened at both ends, tied to a string. Okay? The fisherman would put bait around the hook. This we'll call it a hook, wrapping it so that it was tied to the string. Okay? Then he'd stick it in the water, go away. And eventually a fish would come along and swallow the thing. Now, most fish do not eat, or they don't chew food. There's only a few that do that. Most fish just swallow the food, and then they digest it in their throat or in their stomach, whatever. Okay? And that's what will happen. As the fish is digesting it, eventually he digests the bait away, and the hook opens up, and now it is stuck in that fish, either in his stomach or his throat. And the fisherman just comes along, hauls him up. This is an ancient tool, thousands of years old, and it's still used in some parts of the world today because it works. Okay, here on the Suisun Marsh, in the wintertime, there are tens of thousands of birds down there. Geese of all kinds, ducks, whatever. And the Indians, the Patwin Indians, our Patwin, hunted them. They didn't use bow and arrow. Bow and arrow is a waste of arrows. Okay? You will never hit it. But anyway, they used tule, and you can see that it's a very strong, it's a grasp, it's very strong. You can make a lot of things with it. Okay? They made nets, maybe 8 feet high and maybe 80 feet long. And they'll put them in the marsh, bury them, or let them sink just below the water, and then the hunters would go hide in the tule, tall grass here, and eventually the ducks would come down and feed. They feed in the shallow water for little fish, crabs, whatever. And when they're happy eating, another hunter would come along and just sort of shoo them toward the net. Okay? And when they were in close to the net, then he would rush at them and get them to fly. Now, if you ever watch ducks fly, they don't take off like a helicopter and go. They have to kind of get a running start to get air moving under their wings. And that's what would happen. They would take off and start to fly away from the hunter toward the net. And they were not looking ahead of them, they were looking back at this guy. Okay? And the other hunters here would raise the net, and many of the birds would fly into the net and get tangled up in there. That's how the Patwin hunted ducks. Okay, let's see. This is probably the last thing I want to talk about. This is also a tool. It's not a hammer, it's not an axe, it's a scraping tool. Whenever the Indians caught a large animal and they wanted to use the hide for something, you have to scrape the flesh off, okay? Because the flesh will rot and it stinks, and nobody likes that. So anyway, this is an elk hide down here that's sitting on the table. This is a scraping tool. The women would scrape off all the flesh and then dry the hide and use it for that. But anyway, this is from a cow shoulder bone. You can see the joint at this end here and the flat sharpened edge of the blade here. Okay, that's it. And if there are any questions, ask your teacher.